There's a reason we started early, because I gotta get this out of my system, because I'm looking at a lot of you, and I've made some of you eat some nasty things. It's been awesome. I just want to say thank you. Your stomach. I just want to say thank you to all of you. It has been an honor to get to lead Arlington groups with you, get cheated out of Camp Champs with you, and come up with some crazy games, to laugh and cry with all of you. It's been an honor, and I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. So this is it. We're going to go on. We have an exciting new season. Madeline and I are going to get married very soon. Yes. Yes. So we're going to go on. Every good story comes to an end. I've gotten to share with you guys a lot of crazy things that have happened in my life. Tonight will be my last one, and then I'm going to go off and live some new stories. And you all are going to go on, and you're going to live your own stories. Okay? But I guess I'm crying because this is a funny story. And it won't be funny if I'm crying. Okay. So we started early because it's a little bit longer, but now we're running late because I'm trying to get a hold of my own self, so it's okay. So let's get started. How many in here have ever been to New York City? Show of hands. Times Square, New York, y'all familiar? Fantastic place, awesome place. If you haven't, go. If you ever get the opportunity, it's really cool, okay? Beautiful place, beautiful people, not all of them, all sorts of shapes and sizes, and all sorts of smells, okay? And my good friend Isaiah Smith, he went with me a few years back. We went with a group of guys. We drove from here to Dallas to D.C., Washington, D.C. We spent a few days there. And then, praise God for that quarter. We spent a few days in D.C., and then we drove up to New York City. Okay, and there was another group. This is a slightly important detail. There was another group that was on another trip, and they met us in D.C., okay? Blake Grisham, he's in here, his cousins, they were the ones that were on the trip. Did you go? You weren't there. No, he wasn't there, nerd. So we went to D.C. If you've never been, there's Times Square. It's a really cool place, okay? Thousands of people everywhere, shoulder to shoulder. There's lights, there's music, everything. It's so cool, okay? And every day, we would run around, we'd go to shops, sightseeing, and do different stuff. And then every night, we would go to Times Square because there were street performers everywhere. And we would just walk in circles and watch all the different street performers, not all of them, but most of them. There would be acrobats and magicians, comedians, street preachers. There'd be bands, okay? But there was one group that they weren't really performing anything, okay? And just a warning, this will get a little mature, okay? But it has to for the story to make sense, okay? But there were a group of ladies that you could pay to take pictures with, okay? And they had nothing on but paint. That's it. And then they wore these big feather headdresses, and we would call them the feather ladies, right? And you could see them over the tops of crowds, and they'd come walking through the crowd, and you'd see their big old feathers over everybody's head. And so we, because we were wise, would avoid, because we knew it wasn't smart for us to be in that environment, and we would avoid them every night. Okay, but we would go to Times Square every night. The last night we were there was a John Mayer concert. Half of the group went to the concert. The other half of us went to Times Square. We're we'll just meet up. So we go to an Old Navy, right? We go to an Old Navy. We're shopping. We go down to the bottom. There's a 3-story thing. I go back to the first story. Isaiah is sitting at the front door, and he's just kind of doing Isaiah's dance. You all know. You know how he does. And he's doing this with his hands, and he's got this smirk. He looks eager. And I'm like, what are you thinking, Isaiah? What's going on? And he's like, I want to do something. And I was like, dude, we're in New York. This is the something. What do you mean? And he goes, no, I want to mess with people. I'm like, oh, sign me up. Like, let's do it. That's my favorite hobby. And he's like, well, I don't know what to do. So we start talking, and I go, well, I have an idea. The feather ladies are right outside. What if we stole their business? Okay? He goes, I love it. I'm not doing it, but you can do it. And I was like, well, I'm not doing it by myself. So one of our good friends, his name was Alex Fisher. We call him Fish. I'll reference him as Fish in this story, just for clarity. He was at the concert. We said, oh, he will definitely do it. Concert gets done, they walk up. He comes walking up, I don't say anything. All I say to him is, Fish, I've got a terrible idea, but I need you to be in your underwear for it. Without hesitation, no questions asked, he strips down outside of this Old Navy in his underwear. Okay, there is a picture, I can't show it, but there is a picture. And and I'm just like in shock, and he's smiling at me, and he says, why are you still dressed? And I'm like, dude, I don't know. So what do? I get undressed too, because I'm an idiot. And now we're standing outside, and he goes, okay, what's the plan? And I'm like, the feather ladies? He's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, we're gonna go steal their business. And so there's a big open space, and these ladies are out there, and they're, showing off. And we walk out, and we're like, hey, you guys can take pictures with us too. Like, you can pay us money and take photos with us. And everybody in the crowd started to laugh, and they took pictures of us. They didn't pay. We didn't make any money. And but the ladies didn't think it was funny. They got mad. We did this for a few minutes, and then finally, I was overwhelmed with embarrassment. I really didn't want to be doing this. I said, okay, I'm done. So we go back to our friends. We had given them our clothes. They had stuffed it in a backpack. We didn't know which one. And they open up the bag, and it's gone, our clothes. And they said, we don't know how to tell you this, but your clothes got stolen. And I was like, what do you mean my clothes got stolen? They're like, somebody pickpocketed our bags, and they took I was like, you're telling me somebody opened your bag, saw my clothes, and said, yeah, this is it. This is why I took up pickpocketing, like for these clothes. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, well, we got to go back to the hotel. Like, I got to get new clothes. And they're like, oh, well, okay, maybe if you get somebody to pay for a photo, your clothes might reappear. We're like, okay. So instead of refusing, we played the game. We started walking around. The only deal was we couldn't tell people that our clothes were being held from us. So we started walking the streets of Times Square, and we're like, pay $1 to take a photo with us. We look like morons, but please pay us money. No one would do it. We did this for a little bit. Finally, we said, look, nobody's going to pay us money for this. Can we please make it for free? And they're like, yes, but you still can't tell anybody. Okay. So we start doing that. Still, no one's taking a photo. Finally, we said, can we just beg people and tell them what's happening? And they're like, yes. Because they're like, at this point, they're like, the game's gone on too long. We can't just give you the clothes, but we are ready for you to be dressed as well. Now, during this escapade, half of the group, like the group that joined in, they left. They went shopping. They got tired of watching us walk around and humiliate ourselves. They had our clothes in their bags when they left. Finally, Fish and I are like, please, somebody, take a picture with us. We just want our clothes back. 2 hands shoot up. People come out, and they're like, we'll take a photo with you. So somewhere out there's a picture of me and Fish with 2 people in the middle of New York. And I hope it never surfaces, because it would be bad. So we finally get it. We run back. We're like, hey, we're eager. Can we have our clothes back? And they're like, well, funny thing is so-and-so has your clothes, and they're gone. And I was like, well, call them. Like, let's get our clothes. I'm ready to have a shirt on. And they're like, okay, so they call them. They find out that they're on the other side of Times Square, okay? And this is the climax of the story. They find out they're on the other side of Times Square. And in the middle of Times Square, there's this huge highway that cuts through, and traffic flows all day and all night long, never stopping. And the crowd will gather getting ready to cross, and then there's officers that are like crossing guards, and they're letting people, keeping the flow going. We're stopped there. There's music playing. We're all crowded in. I'm so dumb because I'm naked right now. But Fish starts to bob his head like this. And I'm like, okay, Fish, I see you. So I start bobbing my head. He steps out in front, creates a small space. small space, does a little white boy dance move. Our friends are like, oh, okay, Ty, what do you've got? And I'm like, no, that's not what I do. I don't dance. They're like, oh, come on. So I step out into the little space that has gotten a little bit bigger because people are paying attention because we're making noise. And I do a white boy dance move. And then, yeah, you don't want to. No. And so I step out, I do one, and they go nuts. There's people around us now gathered. Big circle. Big open space. And I step out there, I do my dance, and I stop and I look around, and I notice like poof, like from me to the back row. That's how big of a space. And the circle. Open, right? And I'm looking around, everybody's got their phones, they're recording. People are sitting on each other's shoulders so they can see. People are climbing things so they can see what's happening inside this circle, okay? And I look at them and I'm like, guys, this is a problem. They don't know we're just idiots looking for our clothes. Like they think we're street performers and we're about to give them a show. About this time, the music shuts off and turns right back on, but this time it's way louder. And it's Old Town Road featuring Billy Ray Cyrus. Awful song. Don't clap for that. Who's clapping? Don't clap for that. And this man steps out from the other side of the circle with a big stereo. He's the one playing it. He puts it on the ground, sits on it, points at me, points to the center of the circle. We have a challenger, ladies and gentlemen. Like he's ready to dance. And I'm like, oh no, I can't. I turn around and say, guys, we got to go. And they're like, no, this is real life. Like this is happening. You're dancing. And I'm like, I don't want to dance. And they're like, no, you have to. Like you have to dance. And so I turn around. There I am, New York City, naked, with hundreds of people. There's a video. Hundreds of people watching, looking at us like go ahead, dance, do something, right? So I do. I didn't want to, but I was like, okay, whatever, I'll do it. So I step out, again, I dance. I think I did like the lawnmower or something. Listen, if you're familiar, this guy. My friends go nuts, which caused the rest of the crowd, cheering is contagious. The rest of the crowd's like, okay, yeah, I'll cheer for that, sure, you know. This guy steps out, does something incredible. Now it's Fish's turn. Fish goes out, he dances, does like the whip or whatever. Everybody goes nuts again. Then this guy steps out, he's about to go. Crowd's only getting bigger. People are just people, sea of people watching us. And I'm like, what's happening? And right before it really blew up, two officers bust into the center of the circle and they hit the grid. I'm kidding. They jump into the center of the circle. They grab the stereo. One of them grabs the stereo. The other one grabs the other man. Thank God they were on the other side. Fish and I are like, oh no. So we run. We hide because we're naked. We're like, well, I don't want to be caught out here. So we dip behind our friends. The cops start yelling that the crowd needs to disperse, the music needs to stop, the show has to end, because the crowd that we have gathered was so large, we blocked the highway. We had so many people, okay? And that is I was a part of the largest dance circle in Times Square history. We left, we finally got our clothes back, and we got to enjoy the rest of the trip, right? And it's still one of the funniest moments in my life. That story, though, is a picture of what compromise will get you. It will always land you somewhere you never intended. And there is a murder, because we're going to conclude our Clue series. There is a murder in the Bible that is the result of compromise. It's when a man named Judas betrayed our King Jesus. So some info on Judas. He was one of the 12 disciples. He was the only one that wasn't from the local area when Jesus called people, so he was like the only outsider of the group. He was the accountant for the disciples, so he was in charge of all their money. And he loved to make money. okay? And the obvious one, he betrayed Jesus. Now, I do not believe that when Jesus called Judas to follow him, that Judas sat there and thought to himself, you know what, I think I'm going to follow this guy until I can make some money off of him. I believe he answered the king's call with a full heart, fully believing in the ministry and in the mission and in the kingdom of Jesus. I mean, he was there when Jesus healed the sick, when he restored broken hearts. He was there when he fed the 5,000. He was there for every lesson and every sermon. He was there. He stuck with Jesus even when the disciples were being persecuted and chased, right? He stuck with Jesus. He was having sincere and authentic moments with the Lord. But he had a problem that he never took care of. John 12, verses 1 through 6, you guys can throw it up. It says, 6 days before the Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, where Lazarus lived, whom Jesus had raised from the dead. Here a dinner was given in Jesus' honor. Martha served, and Lazarus was among those reclining at the table with him. Then Mary took out a pint of pure nard, it's like perfume, and an expensive perfume, and she poured it on Jesus' feet and wiped his feet with her hair. And the house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But one of the disciples, Judas, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It's worth a year's wages. He did not say this, pay attention to this. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. He was a thief, right? He'd steal some money from the disciples' money bag, their account, to help himself get rich. Now, if you ask me, in my humble opinion, I believe this started off as a seemingly harmless and insignificant bad decision. I believe Judas was probably just sitting there, and he's looking at the money, and he's alone, and he's thinking, I'll just take a little bit. I won't take a lot. It's not going to hurt the group. Nobody will notice. We'll still have enough for food and supplies for our journey. It's whatever. It's only going to benefit me. I'll never do it again. I promise. And then it became one more time. And then it became one more time. And then he took a few more coins. And he took a few more coins. And then it was compromise after compromise. Empty promise after empty promise. You will only make a compromise once. You'll never make the same compromise twice. The next time you do it, it'll be a little bit further, and then a little bit further. It has to be. It's the nature of things. And instead of taking care of this issue, we know that he hid this problem that he had, right? Until finally he makes the final and ultimate compromise upon his character. After this story right here, right after this, Jesus gets up and he washes the feet of the 12 disciples, all 12 of them. Judas knew what he was going to do. At this point in the biblical narrative, he knew that he was going to betray Jesus. He had already planned it out. Jesus also knew what Judas was going to do. And he still washed his feet. Our King washed the feet of his betrayer. And they both knew. And instead, Judas didn't sit there and have the King of Kings sit there washing his feet, performing the ultimate act of servanthood. And he didn't sit there and say, Jesus, I've messed up. I've been stealing from the money bag. I've been making mistakes, and I've got this terrible idea in my heart, and I think I'm going to go through with it. Please help me. He didn't do that. Instead, he gets up and he leaves. And then in Matthew, chapter 26, verse 14 and 15, you can throw it up there. It says this. You can leave this up there until the next. Then one of the 12, the one who was called Judas, went to the chief priest. This is right after the oil. This is right after Jesus washes his feet. Went and asked, what are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you? So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. That's the price of a slave during this time. He just wanted to make some money. It was the final, Matt, if you're in here, you can go ahead and come back up. It was the final, most horrible act of compromise. It stripped him of all honor, all integrity. It was as if when he grabbed those 30 pieces of silver, his character became nothing. And it was like he was standing there naked before all of these Pharisees, and they're just staring at him like go ahead, dance, do something. And we know he didn't want to do it, because right after he does it, he commits suicide. It is the tragedy of Judas. And it is a warning of what can happen to every single one of us. Remember, he had sincere encounters with the Lord. But who is the murderer in this story? Well, Judas, right? Yeah, sure. It's an easy answer. But as I read on in Scripture, I find a terrible truth. I learned that I might be the murderer of this story. I learned that you all might be the murderer in this story. Romans 5, verses 6 and 8. For while we were still helpless, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For one will hardly die for a righteous man, though perhaps for the good man someone would dare even to die. But God demonstrates his own love toward us, and that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. 1 Peter 2:24, he himself bore our sins in his body on the cross. Compromise will always lead you to a place you never intend. Always. It may start small and seem insignificant, and it may seem harmless, but it will always, if you do not take care of it, it will always lead you to a place of chains and bondage and slavery. We say silly things like I'm not going to be addicted to porn. I'll never go there. I'll never go to that place. I'll never click on that link. I'll never find myself addicted to that thing. I'll just watch TikTok. Or I'll look at all the skimpy photos posted on Instagram. Summer photos posted on Instagram. Oh, me and my boyfriend or my girlfriend, we'll never go to that place. We'll never do that thing. We'll never get there. We may get a little touchy-feely, but we won't get there. I promise we won't, or if we do, it'll only be once. Or even if we're not touchy-feely, we'll just watch TV shows, or we'll listen to music that glorify it, or we'll read books that magnify it and make it into this beautiful thing. I'll never betray my friend. I'll never do that. They're my friend after all. I'll just gossip about them, or I'll share their failures or their secrets with other people, or I'll sit and listen to other people do the same. But listen, it's not just about the sexual or the relational things, but it's compromises on your character as an entirety. Do you cheat and lie to get out of things or to get things? It may seem so small and simple, but do you cheat on homework? It's a small compromise. It's a small crack. It's small and it seems harmless, but I promise you, it will always lead to bigger monsters in the end. I promise. You can stand with me. We're all on this scale somewhere. Every single one of us. We're either being tempted currently to make small compromises upon our character. We're dealing with the consequences of big compromises we've made upon our character, or we're somewhere in between. Everyone, me, Riley, all of you. We're all on this scale somewhere. And some of you, or a lot of you, have had very real and sincere encounters with the Lord over this past summer. Some of you have dedicated your lives to the Lord for the first time. Some of you have rededicated your lives to the Lord, and you've made this anthem in your heart, like, I'm going to take it more seriously. Stick to that. Stick to that. But maybe since then, you've made some compromises, and you've found yourself back to where you've started, or you're somewhere along the way. Or maybe you've never knelt at the feet of my King and have felt his mercy and his grace wash over you. And you may think, how can he take me? How can he take me? I'm too far gone. I've messed up too much, or I've messed up again. He saved me from this cage and I came running back. He broke the chains off of my hands, but I picked him up and I shackled myself again. How can he take me? Well, he'll take you with open arms, I'll tell you that. Do not hide your compromises. They will do terrible things to you. Bring them to him. Bring them to him. He will restore you. Be honest with him. He will pick you up. I believe that if Judas had sought forgiveness, even in the garden before he kisses Jesus on the cheek, if he would have sought forgiveness, I believe he would have found it freely in the hands of his King. So here in a second, I'm going to count to 3. I want you to take the moment, just examine your own life. Are there areas in your life you're making compromises? Some of you are about to go into high school for the first time, some of you into middle school for the first time, and some of you into college for the first time. And you're going to have opportunities to make compromises. Do not do it. So on the count of 3, if you would be so bold, if you'd recognize some compromises you've made in your life, and you would be so bold as to say, yeah, that's me. And you'd have the courage to come lay them down at this makeshift altar. And I want you to come down when I hit 3, and I just experience God's mercy. Experience the comfort of his presence. Just examine your life. 1, 2,